growled Norman. "I haven't heard from him in a while." Oh, stop your complaining," grumbled Spampcan. "I'm sure he'll be here. Has anyone been there yet? To the Sodor Railway?" "Not really," said Norman. "They didn't even take any notice of me." "They all haven't taken any notice to you at all," said Splatter. What pity. I was doing the best I can," said Norman defensively. "I was also trying to get back to Paxton." "Oh," said Spampcan, "that traitor who wanted to make friends with the Diesels. Don't worry, the boss will be here." "And here he is," said a voice. It was Diesel 10. "Right," he said. "The reason I've called you all here is that the time has come for us to go back to Sodor to cause trouble. Sir Topham Hatt will be ours, and so will this railway. And the steam engines, even the gold dust," he said. All the diesels were ready and prepared. "Now," he said, to set up this plan, we are to capture the nice and kind diesels, especially that traitor Paxton," he said, and this time the other Diesels, Den and Dart, even Diesel, have failed our last plan, and our plan won't fail again," he said. Our first objective is for Den and Dart to cause trouble, and for Norman and Spampcan to take care of the steam engines, while I take care of the railway itself, and I will rule it," he said. "Any questions?" "No," said the 4 Diesels. "Good. This begins tonight," he said. "I've waited many years of frustration for this, and it begins now," said Diesel 10 and cranked his claw. "Oh no, Billy! Billy!" cried Percy, and raced off to help. "James!" he shouted, and then James raced in to see where the Diesels were, and then there was Dodge coming in too fast, and Splatter racing ahead. He saw Henry and made an escape. "Not so fast! Not so fast! Catch me while you can! I've got him!" And then there was trouble. "Look out!" "Better look next time." "Oh no," cried Henry, and raced off to help. Meanwhile, Thomas and his friends were having a nice sleep in the sheds when they heard a pair of familiar voices. But when they heard a pair of familiar voices, "Guys!" they both said at the same time. There were Henry and Percy looking concerned. "What's going on?" asked Thomas. Then Henry and Percy told them about Splatter and Dodge, and Thomas soon found out. "Well," he said, Now that Gordon and James are derailed, he said, even Billy and his slate truck taken away, we've got to do something. Let's inform the Fat Controller, he said, and they all agreed that something had to be done straight away before it could really happen. Later, the Fat Controller was cross. He was with what Splatter and Dodge had done, but not with James and Gordon. It's your fault, James. If you hadn't have crashed into me, we could have gotten them easily. It wasn't my fault, argued James. I'm not saying it's any of your fault, he said. You two, as well as Billy, will be taken to the works for repairs. I'll be sending some other engines to do your work while you three are away. Thank you, sir, they both said. That's what we'll be needing, and the Fat Controller agreed. Soon it was becoming night time, and Henry and Percy were telling Thomas and the others about this experience. The others were surprised. And then, said Percy, I asked James to get them, he said, but they got away. I saw them from behind and the front, said Henry. I thought I was seeing things, but no, it was really real. I bet that was quite scary, said Stanley. Not for an engine who's doing his job, said Thomas. That actually might have been a serious crash. That would lead us to repairs if this goes on, said Douglas crossly. Those two evil demons won't get away with it. Now, said Neville. Those two will be dealt with, and this railway should have peace. And the other engines knew that Neville was right. Meanwhile, at the front of the sheds, there was trouble. 199 and Norman were investigating to see if any engines were still asleep, but far away they were still chatting. They're too busy to notice us, said Spam Can. We should capture them tomorrow, but for the time being, we'll leave them as is. Tomorrow we will inform the boss today, and then tomorrow those steam engines will be sent to where they belong, the scrappers, he said. And 199 dieseled away, except Norman, who tried to admit misses his company with Paxton and the other engines. I'm not coming back to saying hello to them, he said. They didn't care about me, and why should I care about them, he said, and he scuffled away to go back to the other railway. But in the meantime, all the engines did their work without fuss. Emily looked after the express while Gordon was away, and Murdoch took care of James's passengers. They were enjoying themselves, and they weren't complaining at all. Until meanwhile there was trouble. Stafford had some trucks to take to the docks until he was pushed off the rails by Dodge. He tumbled into a bank. Splatter had shunted Stafford's stone truck. Dodge had just shunted Stafford's stone truck and let Splatter take over, and Stafford's trucks were taken away. My trucks, moaned Stafford, but it was already too late. Just then, while Stafford was derailed, Donald bustled in and stopped. "Oh, 6!" said Donald. "Stafford, what has happened to you?" Then Stafford explained. Out of Donald's was the Fat Controller. He was still not happy. "That would mean another engine sent to the works. There's something I don't like about this." And he decided to pay a visit to the diesel sheds. "Donald, take me there." Yes, sir," said Donald. and he puffed away. Until at last, Donald arrived at the diesel sheds, and the Fat Controller finally found the diesels asleep. "Wake up, both of you," he said. The diesels both woke up in surprise. "That's good," he said, and then the diesels both surveyed the Fat Controller. "What do you want from us?" asked Diesel suspiciously. He was not in a good mood. The Fat Controller soon gave them a stern look. I need to ask you all something," he said. "I've seen Splatter and Dodge causing trouble. Did you three have any part in this?" "But, sir," said Diesel, "with all due respect, we had nothing to do with it. Splatter and Dodge were at the other railway," said Den. I thought they belonged here." "I did too," said the Fat Controller, but if you three confess that you've let them cause trouble, I won't punish you, and then they'll be sent away back to where they belong." But Dart was cross. "We can't confess to something that we didn't do," he said. "Playing difficult to get, are we?" He said, "Fine, so be it, and I will not ask you again." "But, sir," grumbled Diesel, "we did not do such a thing," he said. "Fine," said the Fat Controller. "If you three think this is funny, then so be it. When we capture those two, they will not be sitting in the sheds like last time. It will be much, much worse." The Fat Controller walked away, losing patience, and Donald puffed away. "You are going to get us into trouble," said Dart crossly. "But we didn't do it, so we lied," said Dan, and then they heard two familiar horns. You three are so convincing," said Splatter when he came out to the sheds. You did well during your duties." "Yeah," said Dodge. "You lot lie like it's no big deal," he said. "What do you two want from me?" snapped Diesel. "To take over Sodor and for you three to rebel to Diesel 10 again," said Splatter. If you don't, we are not part of Diesel 10's plans anymore," said Den crossly. "His plans always fail," he said. "Remember that plan when the other engines were quarantined and it failed," said Diesel. "We are not going through that again." "Oh, on the contrary," said Dodge. "I'm afraid you three will join Diesel 10 and take over the railway, and then we'll let you go." "Never," said Dart. "We won't." "Then what if I told you we found Norman?" said Splatter curiously. The three were in shock. "Norman?" said Den. "Where has he been all this time?" "On the other railway, where he belongs, and so do you," said Splatter. The three Diesels were cross. "You know," said Diesel, "Norman has made his choice, and so have we, so we won't go." "I must say I'm very disappointed in you," said Dodge angrily, and he revved his engine. "Get a move on to the Scrappy," he said crossly. Meanwhile, the Fat Controller gathered all of his engines for a meeting at the station when he heard Proteus's whistle. There he was with a coach. "Sir," he said, we've got a surprise for you." And out of Proteus's coach was the railway inspector. "It's good to see you again," he said, and I see your railway hasn't changed a bit." "Well," said the Fat Controller, "I'm sorry, one of my big engines played a trick on one of the other engines," he said. If you can remember, it was the last time you saw my railway. My engines aren't playing any tricks, so they've promised to be as good as gold." "Thank you, sir," said the railway inspector. What a nice station you've got. Nice station you've got, he said. Very good, said the Fat Controller. It is very good. Proteus, show him around the sights. Yes, sir, said Proteus. And the two got in, and Proteus puffed away with the railway inspector and the Fat Controller in the coach. Soon Proteus was enjoying taking the railway inspector and the Fat Controller around when he heard a loud, "Get out of my way!" and it was Diesel 10 racing by. Dust laid everywhere all over Proteus. "My fresh coat of paint," he said. "I just had it polished this morning." "Stupid Diesel 10, he said. The Fat Controller hid, and then he popped out. "Is everything all right, Sir Topham?" asked the railway inspector. "Oh, everything's under control," he said. Proteus, don't worry about that Diesel 10. Stay focused." "Yes, sir," said Proteus, and they carried on. Until later on, Proteus arrived at the yards, and there he saw Splatter, Dodge, and the other Diesels, and Norman with the other bunch of Diesels. Proteus was shocked. "Oh no," he groaned. "The other Diesels were in trouble now." The railway inspector looked out. "Oh, sir," he said, "I didn't know you had another bunch of new Diesels." "Neither did I," said the Fat Controller, trying not to lose his temper. "Get us out of here, old boy." "Yes, sir," said Proteus, and he steamed away. Until just then, Spampcan felt like he heard something. "What was that noise?" he asked. "Oh, it was just nothing," said Splatter. Let's just carry on with our plan." Thank you, Splodge," said Diesel 10, when he rounded up all of the good Diesels into a siding. He had some other plans to take care of. Splatter, he said, "you can take the express." "Yes, sir," said Splatter. "And Dodge," he said, round up the other coaches and set them for scrap," he said. "And Norman, you stay here and make sure those traders don't even think about escaping. I'll have a word with all of them, especially that one right there." "Don't hurry yourself," said Paxton cheekily. And then Diesel 10 had other plans. "Spampcan," he said, "come with me. We're going after the gold dust." "Yes, sir," said D199, and they hurried on, and Splatter and Dodge were on their way to take care of the coaches. "Why do you believe in all the lies Diesel 10 says to you?" said Rusty. "Because they're true," said Norman. "You are all saying, 'Where were you, Norman? How you been, Norman?' he said. "Well," he said, "on the other railway," he said. "You lot didn't even come over to look for me," he said. Yes, we did," said Dennis. "I was part of that team. We all cared about you," he said. "The whole island does care about you, Norman," said Mavis. "You just wasn't there to see that," he said. "That's why we came looking for you, and we know we were there to help you," he said. "And you wasn't there to see that as well. And that's when we knew you were missing," said Dart. Just do something what a really useful engine could do, and let us go." Norman opened the truth and accepted it. He apologized and let the other Diesels go. They were pleased that Norman was now a changed Diesel, and they were set to go and save the day. Soon Thomas arrived at the station where the Fat Controller was waiting for him. He looked nervous. "You look worried, sir," he asked. "Yes, I am, Thomas," he said. "But there's something I need to show you first," he said. "Then we can explain it later." He hopped on board Thomas, and Thomas puffed away. Soon, when Thomas arrived at the other station, he gasped. He saw someone there, stood by none other than the return of Mighty Mac. "Mighty Mac," he said, "it's good to see you again." "It is," said Mighty. "After our proper repairs at Crewe, we do look splendid and have modern brakes once again," he said, and the Fat Controller turned his attention. This truck carries a box of gold dust," he said. "Mighty Mac has been taking care of it the whole time after his return, he said. "You must take it to the main line safely at once," he said. "Yes, Thomas," said Mighty Mac. "We believe Diesel tends after the gold dust to rule this railway. Just don't let him use it." "I won't," said Thomas bravely, and he was brave at once. At last, Mighty Mac handed over the truck of gold dust to Thomas, and Thomas steamed away with it with pride. And the Fat Controller soon came to Mighty Mac. "Come on, you two," he said. "We have a mission to take care of," and the two puffed away. Soon Thomas came around the bend and saw someone. There was Spencer, in a familiar colour. Spencer was back. "I'm back. I'm better than ever," said Spencer. "Spencer," said Thomas. "Oh no, first he was going too far since the last time we saw him, and now he's helping the Diesels. How could he betray us?" he said. "At long last, Thomas," said Spencer, "after Diesel 10 decided to give me this fresh coat of paint," he said, "I now look splendid as usual." Thomas was cross and didn't have time for Spencer's nonsense. "Now hand over the gold dust, and I won't push you off the rails." "No," said Thomas, and he raced off. Spencer began chasing after him. "You won't get away this time, Thomas," he said, and then Thomas steamed away. He went back through the station, and then while Spencer was not looking, raced through a bend and passed by the empty engine shed. Soon Flynn the fire engine was racing on to any emergencies. When he was coming back, he saw Spencer, and Spencer, with an evil smile, intimidated Flynn. "Where is Thomas?" he said, but Flynn didn't say anything. "Come on now," he said, "I want answers." But Flynn didn't say anything. Spencer even biffed him hard and shunted him up the hill. "Come on now," he said. "If you don't tell me where Thomas is, I will push you." And then the drawbridge began to open. It went so high that Flynn even dropped his flatbed and into the river. "Any last words?" said Spencer. "If you don't tell me where Thomas is, you will be washed away." But Flynn shivered. "1," said Spencer. 2, with Flynn's tender off the rails and into the river. 3, and he pushed Flynn into the sea. "Fine," he said. "What a waste of time." And Spencer didn't know he was watched. Soon, Mighty Mac raced in. He had seen what had happened and felt very shocked. "Oh no," cried Mighty. "Why would Spencer do that? He's never pushed anyone off the rails and into the water before," said Mac. "Poor Flynn," they both said. "Now he's washed away." Soon Spencer was gone by the time the drawbridge was down again, and Mighty Mac continued their search and on to their mission. Soon Mighty Mac was feeling fed up. "I hope you'll be alright," moaned Mac. "I do too," said the Fat Controller, "but we have to focus on stopping the diesels." But then Mac found out that he had been watched by Diesel 10. "This engine looks like he knows where the gold dust is. Spampcan," he said, "stay here and make sure no engine escapes." "Yes, sir," said Spampcan, and he stopped. Diesel 10, all on his own, was ready. "Yes," he said, "looks like it's off to the scrappy with this one. Pinchy's hungry," he said. "Go on, old boy," said the Fat Controller, and the Mighty Mac, with all their speed, raced through. The three were in a tight battle, and then the two crashed into each other, and Diesel 10 went flying up in the air and into a ditch. "No," he groaned, "this can't be." "Well done, old boys," said the Fat Controller. "He won't be moving for long. We are going to take care of him." Just then they saw Thomas with the gold dust truck being chased by Spencer, and when Mighty Mac and the Fat Controller saw Spencer was scared. "Oh dear," he groaned, "I better get out of here," and he raced weakly away. Soon Mighty Mac spoke to Thomas. Did you see what he did to Flynn?" "I did," said Thomas. "It was tragic." "Indeed it is," said the Fat Controller. "Now let's get Diesel 10 to be punished," he said, and the four were ready for their victory. And at last all the other engines were back, and so was Mighty Mac, with the capture of the other diesels. The Fat Controller spoke to them severely. "My railway is not your playground. Your railway is the other railway, so you can go back to those magic buffers and never come back." "It's not over yet," groaned Diesel 10. "I wanted the gold dust all to myself anyway." "What?" said Spampcan. "You want it all to yourself? What a traitor," said both Splatter and Dodge. "No, Mighty," he said. "Please, sir," interrupted Coldy, "don't send Norman away. He's changed now." And the Fat Controller interrupted Coldy back. "I will give Norman a trial," he said. "I am sorry about everything," he said. "I will be reminded of my diesels in future as I am with my steam engines," he said. Norman was shocked. "Thank you, sir," he said. "I would like that." And with that, the Fat Controller was ready. "Mighty Mac, escort them to the magic buffers." "Yes, sir," they both said, and they were on the double. Until later that night, the old friends Gordon and James were back from the works, and they will be ready for their usual routines tomorrow. Gordon and James were happy to be back from repairs. The Fat Controller also had some disturbing news. "I've looked everywhere for Spencer and Flynn, but they are nowhere to be seen." "Flynn did save our lives," said Henry. "We had a good friend in him, and now he's gone." "He won't be. Captain will be searching for him soon," he said. "So don't worry about Spencer or Flynn." And he walked away. The other engines went tragically to sleep, not knowing what was going to happen. But today wasn't a tragic day at all. Thomas had his passengers back. His coaches, Annie and Clover, were saved, as well as Wilhelmina and Henrietta. And soon, when he got to the station, he found Dart, Dan, Diesel, and Norman. The Fat Controller had words for the three diesels. I'm sorry I didn't believe you both, he said. Will you forgive me? Sure, sir, said Diesel. Happy to accept your apologies, we are, said Dan. Good, said the Fat Controller, and then he turned to Norman. You are a fine working Diesel, he said. You deserve to stay in my railway. I'm sorry for what I've made you go through, he said. I admit it was all my fault. Thank you, sir, said Norman. I'm finding this a pleasure to stay here, he said, and then he walked away. Thomas whistled goodbye to the 4 Diesels and found Mighty Mac. You did a good job saving that gold dust, Thomas, said Mighty. Yeah, said Mac, we couldn't have done it without you. At least we're still together again, said Thomas. Diesel 10 and the others won't come back anymore. And with that, the 3 whistled goodbye, and Thomas was still puffing around once again on his branch line, safe and sound.